We have two stories today. What would you do with $1 million? Francis Brown, CEO of AnimaxFYB and one of the leading animators in this country, says that he would bring about a revolution in the animation industry in Ghana. That's the first story. And the second story, doubling down on animation, we'll be talking about the box office of the top 10 animated films or animations on the worldwide box office charts. This is the Film Mandate. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Papa Otu, and welcome once again to the third episode of the Film Mandate. Today, we'll be talking about what Francis Brown said he'll be doing with $1 million when he was interviewed on Joy News. For what he said, is it possible or otherwise? It, would it work? We'll also be talking about the top 10 animated films worldwide and also delve a little bit into the how much animation have been making over the years. Specifically, we're talking about the year 2023 and the projections that market research online has made concerning the year 2033, how much money the animated or the animation industry will be making. So I would like you to do something for me. I would like you to go on to YouTube and subscribe on the channel and also like and share this video so that others would want to watch and talk about movies can get on board and we can grow the community to make an impact in Ghana and Africa. So to begin my first story, I'd like to show an interview that Francis Brown, the CEO of AnimaxFYB, granted Joy News concerning the industry. But before we proceed, there is another excerpt that I would like to talk about, which I won't be playing here, and that has to do with the Two Cities and a Dream. That's the title of the video. Also, I mean, an excerpt of this longer version of the interview that I would like you to take a look at. I'll try and drop a link in the description below. But he spoke about his journey in establishing his business and right from school, and then the challenges, how he was able to overcome every challenge, and yet because of the animation he did, it opened doors of opportunities for him to travel all over the world and then be able to bet what is now West Africa's largest and leading animation studio, which I mean, he's been doing some great works. So you can even go onto his website and check more of some of the productions that he has done. Now, I'll be showing you an interview, a different excerpt of the interview he granted, and that was when he brought up the issue of. I mean, he was asked the question that if he is granted $1 million, what can he do with it? So I'd like us to take a listen, and afterwards we would talk about it.
What will $1 million do for your business?
$1 million.
Yes.
$1 million.
Not a grant, not a loan, but a contract worth $1 million, say, from the Ministry of Education to produce content for preschoolers in the country.
Okay,
if
so
we give you $1 million, can you produce enough content for preschoolers in the country, for example?
we'll produce more than enough. And aside from that, we won't just make Ghana education great. We'll make Africa education great. And Ghana will be the beacon of education in Africa through this initiative. And aside from getting that reputation, the government will also make a lot of money out of this. And we're going to make sure that it's not just a governmental run thing, it will be a PPP, so that the commerce side of things will really stand tall.
So you can produce the content and it's distributed across all media, so that multimedia, GBC, Asasi Broadcasting, EIB. You know, when we're kids after school, usually between the 3, 4, 5 p.m.
There we
bands,
go.
there was yes.
Cartoon
Yeah,
Network.
Cartoon
and all-
Network.
yeah.
Yes, that's what I was watching all the time. And
Yeah.
And then
Hey,
Captain Planet,
you see-
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
is it the way our game is it has changed so much. If I go in depth, I might scare people or even blow minds. What we do, it's not just our universe now. Is not just where we sit and what you see. We have the metaverse. We have blockchains. Everything that we produce, like if we are working with Ministry of Education, for instance, to create our curriculums into things, we will make it into a 360 IP. We are going to generate IPs. We are not just going to make content. So these IPs will go into merchandising, big time. We will go into gaming. We will go into different aspects of educational content, material
Virtual
creation, product,
reality.
augmented reality, and all that.
Yeah, so this is the excerpt I was talking about, where Francis Brown was interviewed by some broadcasters at Joy News, and he, the question of what he can do or will be able to do with $1 million was posed to him. And you heard it yourself. From what he said, he made a lot of sense. But before we even delve into what he said, the challenge in this part of our world is that when we talk about films, most often would your mind would go to live action films and documentary, but rarely do you have people talking about the possibility of an animated film or animation, whether it's 2D or 3D or even CGI. So for an individual, and I mean, in essence, also his company, and I believe that there are also other uh, animated or animation companies in Ghana. But for Animax FYB, with the lead being Francis Brown, holding the fort for over, I think, 10 years or over 10 years, it's worth talking about. It's such a wonderful milestone that he needs to be applauded. And for him to talk about, if granted the opportunity to be funded with $1 million, the things he said or he mentioned that he'll be able to do in the educational system to even bring about profit for government, I believe is more qualified to do that. Why do I say that? For him to have worked for 10 years and done a number of productions, not just as a company, but also provided services for not just local clientele, but foreign clientele. I believe he's garnered the necessary expertise, and he spoke as a businessman who realized that there is the need for PPP, that is private public partnerships, to make this a possibility. If you watched my video yesterday, I was saying that the industry, that is the film or creative arts industry, won't work, needs three factors to make it work, and that it has to do with the policy and then infrastructure and data. In this case, for government to come in, the funding is also necessary, and I believe that with the right policies in place, it can even help facilitate to bring about funding. And I know they were talking in hypotheticals, but I think whoever might have watched it or whoever is watching this now and has the potential to be an investor should take a critical look at it. I guess I will be able to persuade anybody watching at this moment when I show some figures in the second story. But for what Francis Brown said, if you look at other economies, there's an animation in Australia called Bluey, and it's so big and huge that it's it's transcended their borders to Europe and even in the US. And there is even a talk about making a feature film, animated feature film out of that series. That's how impactful animation is, even currently as we speak. In the video they made mention of the times when we used to watch Cartoon Network. I myself benefited from that between the hours of 3, 4, 5 every weekday, and then way back in the 90s, yeah, 90s or early 2000s, there was also Captain Planet. And listen, it was so magical. You would want to rush home and watch it. And one thing I've come to realize in this industry is that when you consider the creative arts carefully, little attention, little or even no attention is paid to creating content for kids or young children. And it is a problem. And I'm glad that Francis Brown is and Animax FYB, and I believe other animation companies are championing the cause of making sure that this gap is filled with quality content. But it can't be done alone. In as much as they are talking in hypotheticals, finances are needed to make this a possibility. Listen, whether we choose to accept it or not, we are competing with the world. We sit here, and just as I spoke yesterday, I spoke of China having, I mean, on their current box office charts, and not just them, but the worldwide. Neza 2 currently is leading, which is an animation, and it's grossed over $2 billion. It's grossed over $2 billion. And granted, without the necessary funding into this industry, there is no way we'll be able to compete confidently with the outside world. Yes, creatives would do the best that they can. But just as he explained, and I'm sure if you watch the other interview, that is two cities and a dream, he explained that animation, when he was starting his company, he needed to buy um, desktops. And it's not even limited to desktop. There are other things that you need in order to make sure that your production line is complete, and all has to do with technology. So the creatives alone can't do it. You also need the necessary logistics to make that a possibility. And aside that, the creatives need the necessary incentives in terms of remunerations to help them focus and bring about, the, stimulate their creative juices the best possible way. Because sometimes when you are destitute, you won't be able to bring out the very best in you. So, in as much as they were speaking in hypotheticals, I am praying that someone watching me right now with a deep pockets would be able to think about this carefully and invest in Francis Brown and any other animators in Ghana who is trying to create content for children. And just as he said, creating content for children is very profitable. It's very profitable. There is, look at Disney, Walt Disney. Walt Disney has produced content for kids for decades. And more often than not, all these contents are able to make enough money for them to continue to produce it. I mean, they've had their failures I mean, in the years, but any quality producing animation studio has always reaped the benefits of creating animation for kids. So this aspect of the film industry in Ghana, I would say, has barely been touched. So I mean, it is something that I will plead to those with the financial resources and the network of investors to take a critical look at this animation industry and really put some funding into helping artists and animators like Francis Brown and the others who are in Ghana who can create content both for the educational sector and some of the ideas and things that Francis Brown outlined there. So I really like the vision he brought about and explained the various aspects of the animation industry that we can tap into, like blockchain. Or he spoke about AR, augmented reality, and so forth. So to make this work, $1 million and more can help make such dreams a possibility and make Ghana and in the bigger context, Africa, a force to reckon with when it comes to the animation industry. So this is my first story, and yeah. So just as I said, in my second story, I want us to double down and talk more about what the global animation industry is like, having an understanding of the landscape of the global animation industry. So, what would I like to show you some text? Yeah, so I would like to show you some text and then, yeah. Now, from what you can see, this is a research done by zionmarketsresearch.com, zionmarketsresearch.com, and then based on the data they collated in the year 2023, the global animation market was 371.21 billion dollars cumulatively. That's the entire world in just a single year. In just a single year. And this um, has to do not just with the mainstream film animation world, but gaming and all other aspects that require animation to make it work. This is how much money the industry of animation is making. The question we need to ask ourselves as Ghanaians and Africans is that how much of this pie have we been able to get? How much of it have we been able to get? That's the question. And in the year 2033, the projections are that the animation global animation market will be making $590.85 billion. This is the projection. I don't know whether we were factored into this particular projection, but I believe if Africa should join impactfully, it will even go beyond $600 billion. And these are some of the driven factors that would lead to making this a possibility. We are talking about advances in technology, increasing demand for animated content, the rise of streaming platforms. And all these things actually make sense because technology today is making animation quite easy to do. It doesn't less the work in certain aspect. It doesn't make some of the work less in certain aspect, but it's making it much easier to do. And even some of the technologies are quite cheaper now compared to back in the days. And because we live in a content consuming era, there's a lot of demand for content, and most often what we see online is just people taking videos of themselves or watching content of films, series, and all that. But then with the surgence of some of this AI technology, a lot of people end up um, making images of themselves or avatars of themselves, and all these are part of the aspect, part and aspect of animation. Beyond that, the demand of content, whether for social media or streaming platforms, as has been indicated here, would definitely lend the opportunity for people to create some of these content in animation. The question is that how are we positioning ourselves as Africans or African content creators as in the aspects of animation to capitalize on this projections or on this opportunity? That is where we need to take a critical look as a country, as a government, as a continent to really um, help push our way into this very opportunity. A lot of the films that our children watches, even for us grown-ups that we watch, I can say perhaps 99.99% of those contents are foreign produced animation productions. And it doesn't really speak well of the industry. I know we have there are challenges with regards to data, policy, and then infrastructure. But all these things need to really be considered carefully because we have barely about 7 years to this particular projection. It's still not too late to get into the game. But the question is that have we really considered the benefits we stand to gain if we can put the necessary infrastructure in place, a policy to help not just animators, but the creative industry as a whole, and also the necessary collect the necessary data to prove to businessmen that it is possible to build this industry. I believe that if we can put these structures in place, getting a share of the pie here wouldn't be a problem at all. As a matter of fact, we may be able to even project a higher value of money than what zionmarketresearch.com has provided here. But before we wrap up, just as I said, I want to, in addition, show the box office results of some of the animated movies. Let's first start with the general box office, which includes not just animation but also live action, to see what the industry has come to. Yeah, so now, as you can see on the screen, for those who don't know what is displayed on the screen, this is a box office results of the top 1,000 movies in the world, not just in the US, but the entire world. And as usual, you have our avatars, the Avengers. Let me just go straight down to where we would find um, animation in the top 10 of this box office chart. Now you come to number eight, and number eight, you have Neza 2, Neza 2, which I spoke about yesterday, which is among the $2 billion club. This is an animation. Inside Out 2, which came last year, also is among the top 10. And these are animations which has grossed over $2 billion. $2 billion, which we need to consider. Even Avatar on its own, though its motion capture is an aspect of animation because it involves CGI and other technologies that I may not understand. But in every one of these films that are made, there are aspects of animation to it. Look at all these top 10 has aspects of animation, particularly CGI. And these are things that we really need to consider and position ourselves well as a country to capitalize on the opportunities this animation industry presents. Now, let me show you the top 10 animation movies in the world and some of the figures it has grossed. Now, if you take a critical look at some of this, if you take a critical look at some of these productions, currently what I have on screen um, has to do with the top 10 animation movies only from, I think the box office results displayed here are just in the mainland United States. So if it has to do with worldwide, the figures are even far bigger than we can see on screen. Now, um, yeah, so no, sorry. So this displays the box office results of some of the top 10, not necessarily the widely gross animated movies, but top 10 movies in terms of animation on Box Office Mojo. We have Incredibles 2, which grossed the lifetime gross is 608 over $608 million. You have Lion King over $543 million. Finding Dory, Frozen 2, Shrek 2, Toy Story 2. And if you check the year of release, some of them dates as far back as 2004. That is with regards to Shrek 2, 2004. So it's amazing how these numbers, I mean, these animations are making good business on the world stage. And yet, as a country or as an industry, we've not really paid attention to such. I understand that, yes, it's a business, and yeah, private hands needs to, or if you really are a filmmaker, you need to find your way into the industry. But it it can't be possible without the help of certain structures put in place. And for us to get into the foray of this business, we need to find the necessary support, whether be it from investors, governments, and all other aspects of the industry. We all need to put our shoulders to the wheel and make that possible. So, just as Francis Brown said, we can do a lot when the right financial provision is made. And not just that, but also, just as I said, we will need data to be collected as to the growth of the industry and what can be done. I mean, the research I showed from the website, it's just data collection. And they could collect the necessary data to be able to project how much the animation industry can make. With such figures, no businessman will feel uncomfortable to invest their money once they can attest to the fact that these numbers actually does make sense. And this is something that we need in the country. We need data to be collected. We need infrastructure to be put in place and policy to help the creative arts personnel and industry as a whole to have the necessary incentives to be able to keep on creating good content. Well, this brings me to the end of the episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. But before you turn off I mean, from this particular episode, I'd like you to subscribe and then also share this content so that we can grow our community and keep talking about movies. My name is Papa Otu, and this has been the Film Mandate.